Well, good deal. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'll go brief little history. Like my early career was all fisheries management. Worked all across the United States, out in Montana, Idaho, and a big proponent of fisheries observation and sampling is doing a habitat analysis, habitat assessment, and I've done numerous different types all across the U.S. And it always seemed like something was lacking, or like we're able to get a whole bunch of information in one area, but how we're able to use that and extrapolate it throughout a watershed, I always thought something was missing. And so when I started my master's thesis at University of Tennessee in 2010, we kind of started toying around with georeferenced video, and we're kind of just we'll talk about that early part, and what problems it's addressing for different types of organizations, and the solutions that we're able to provide. And so the kind of the main point of what we do is we're filling in this intermediate area right here. We're able to survey 20 miles of river in a day. All my fisheries sampling that we used to do, you'd have 3 to 4 people out there for a day, and you'd document, say, 200 meters, and you'd get a whole bunch of very precise information in that 200-meter section, but then you'd have to extrapolate it for miles upstream and downstream and assume that it's representative. And we've just found, especially since we've covered 2,000 miles of river, that's just not the case. Rivers are just very dynamic by nature, and you start throwing in land use changes and geography and geology and just all, either way, like the rivers are dynamic. And so we need to be able to see with meter resolution what changes are going on where. And then, my master's was biosystems engineering, which is basically a master's in GIS. And so it, got a lot into landscape modeling. And then my associates who I merged my company with, he'd been doing a lot of geographic modeling, and the resolution was never there. Never, at least the resolution was never what he wanted. And being able to QA/QC with meter resolution throughout landscape modeling is just really where HDSS excels. And we'll kind of touch into some more details of that. First and foremost, high definition stream survey is a rapid inventory and assessment. We're able to cover 20 miles in a day. Within that 20 miles in a single day, we understand what are those problems, where are they, and then how severe are those problems. Is it a giant semi truck trailer that's in the water, or is it just a water bottle that somebody threw to the side of the road? And we're able to score both of those and then show where the impact is and how big of an impact it is. And then also when we go back, some of the surveys, whether it's 5 years later or 10 years later, now we're able to show change over time, but with meter resolution, show where the areas declining further or where areas getting better. So here's me back in grad school with my advisor. I was very fortunate for to get that position, and then later turn this thesis into a company. But first and foremost, back then we did a bank erosion hazard index, and that's what I was tasked with. It's been peer reviewed, published. And we just did, bank angle, bank height, riparian diversity, and surface protection using georeferenced video going down the stream. And so since then, we've added forward-facing video just to kind of get a 360 view of everything that's going on. We have underwater video, so you're able to see substrate types, embeddedness, and then even submerged aquatic vegetation, which we'll be getting at a little bit more later. And then the side scan sonar unit is just an incredible tool if you've never used it. But even if that river is very turbid and you can't see, an inch into the water, that side scan sonar is able to show what is going on where as far as substrate types. You can delineate between bedrock, cobble, boulder, gravel. You can see embeddedness, and it even has a hardness measurement, which we'll kind of touch on in one of the projects later. If discharge measurements are needed, a lot of the work we do for hydropower companies, wherever throughout that watershed, we're able to pull over to the side of the river and literally just measure across the river and back and forth again with the ADCP, and we're able to measure discharge, how much cubic feet per second are flowing past that certain point. We have the water quality sensor, and generally that's done with 1 hertz, and so we get a reading every single second, and we're able to combine that with the GPS and all the other sensors that are running. And then we're also able to do water grab samples. And so like we do a lot of abandoned mine land, and they need additional heavy metal and other other types of assessments done back at a laboratory. And so we can do those georeference grab samples in addition to the in situ water quality sampler. but we can also do eDNA sampling. We can do soil, if you actually needed sediment samples, we can grab those. And then the whole point is we have the technology, we got the micro SD cards, we have the battery power. It's turn on the equipment, and literally like a few weeks ago, I surveyed for 9 hours and 15 minutes straight, going down the water, collecting information every single second, those 9 hours and 15 minutes. And so that was kind of a record time that we knocked out here up in Virginia on the New River. We did that project a few weeks ago. And so I'm down here in Florida. I know the vast majority of you are probably in Auburn, but I'm sure we have a few people in other states. We're all looking at the Hurricane Creek River, or Hurricane Creek, on April 21st, 2023 at 8:22 in the morning. And so if I had questions, say on, what do you think this left bank condition looks like, or what is this substrate type, or, what do you think riparian cover is, or are we in a pool riffle run? We can have multiple different hydrologists, dendrologists, pick your science, and, everybody can be looking at this exact snapshot of what is going on in the Hurricane Creek stream corridor. And so we have that reviewable video archive, and then, moving on into the future, we'll again be able to look at what does this look like 5-10 years from now, and then we can really start comparing and pull out some really good data. There's obviously streams of all different sizes. A lot of the stormwater work we do requires a backpack. Basically anywhere a kayak can't go, we can run the backpack. We've surveyed numerous dry stream beds because, again, they needed the data, and if there wasn't water there, there wasn't water there, and that is a snapshot in time. A lot of times the kayak is really good if there's shallow waters, because we can drag that kayak right over the shallow water. If there's tree strainers, we can portage pretty easily if needed. The inflatable boat is incredible for the bigger rivers where we don't have those issues, because if I got to pull that boat up onto a steep stream bank and try and get around a down tree, it's going to be a big pain. But either way, even on the New River, we were there during drought conditions, and there's quite a few shallow areas, but it's just a matter of getting out, pull them over the shallow area, and then you can get back in the pool and motor on down to the next shallow water. And so those inflatable boats are just incredible. There's a little 2.5 horsepower engine on the back, and that just really allows for a steady, 3.5 to 4 mile per hour trajectory going down the river. A lot of times we deal with private property or even just hazardous conditions. And so we'll have a tablet there to take pictures and collect data. We've used drones before to integrate with our, overall high definition stream survey, also with topography surveys. And then we also have the autonomous boat. So, if there's ever water hazards, whether it be water quality hazards or just stuff that we don't have time or the conditions allow to get a boat in there. The whole point is we have all these different platforms, and from the very top of the ridge all the way out to the coral reefs that we've surveyed in Hawaii, we're able to have a platform collect the information, and then you have a continuous GIS track log going throughout that whole watershed. The in the whole GIS world, a lot of people use ArcGIS or they use QGIS. The beauty of high definition stream survey, like after we go out and collect that StreamView video, we'll go ahead and assemble it into this. And so you're able to see left, forward, down, right. That GIS data is embedded within this video. So whether you upload it to ArcGIS or QGIS, you can go ahead and click anywhere on a track log, and boom, you can be, show up, anywhere you want in that tributary. You can see what types of impacts are happening to that bridge, or vice versa. What's that bridge having an impact on the stream corridor itself? And we'll touch, this is actually the Chattahoochee project that we did for the National Park Service. And so I'll get some more details on that later. This right here is kind of the brains. And so like, as we're, watching this video, so say for a continuous assessment, right now, if we're looking at the left bank, like this would probably be a 2 as far as bank condition goes. There's no active erosion. It looks very stable. There's good, there isn't a ton of riparian, but there's, there's good enough trees. So we'll call it a 2. And then right here, you can see, well, here's a cut bank. And so we'll actually cut the bank. I'm sorry, we'll stop the video right where that, right where the conditions change from say a 2 to a 4. And then we designate that change has happened in the continuous assessment. And then you just go ahead and keep on watching video until those changes, it could change for the worse or it could change for the better. But either way, for that continuous sampling, we're documenting the areas of change. And then when it comes to point samples, which you'll see over here on the side, if all of a sudden I receive an outfall coming out of the right bank, I could go ahead, I stop the video will stop once I hit O for outfall, for instance. And then a little dialog box will come up where I say, well, is it right bank or is it left bank or is it both banks or is it just the substrate? Like, where is that impact happening? And then we also are able to score the severity. Like, is this a very bad outfall? Is there radioactive ooze coming out the side or is it just clear water? And so you can really start prioritizing what is going on, where is it, and how bad is it? And so that's kind of just the brains of what we're doing in there. And just to kind of reiterate, every second of video has a date and a time that's associated with the database of all the information. You have a latitude, a longitude, a surface water elevation, substrate elevation, all that is linked. And then we watch that video and we're able to show, this is a stormwater project we did for the city of Cleveland, Tennessee. And so you can see, here's the left stream bank being very unfunctional because it's just a vertical concrete wall. And so it's not necessarily crumbling and eroding, so they're not worried from an infrastructure perspective, but it's more from a stream functionality. Is wildlife and fish, are they able to use this stream corridor? And so looking at that project as a whole, just as an example, you can see it as a whole bunch of very different information that changes every single second as you go down the river. On top of that continuous, we have the stream bed, both stream banks and both riparians. In addition to that, we have all the point information. And so this is going to be your outfalls, your fish barriers, your bridges, your silt fences, your tires, your cows. Like the list kind of goes on of all the different types we're able to document going down the river. And then what we actually deliver to the city of Cleveland, Tennessee is where, we prioritized mitigation throughout their whole watershed. And so, if they have a budget of say $150,000, we can tell them right where to go to get the biggest bang for their buck, because some restoration requires, excavators and very intensive restoration to maybe like protect infrastructure. But then there's also areas where volunteer groups can go pick up trash. And then in that instance, you want to know like where are the densest areas of trash that people can pick up via a canoe. But then there's also different types of trash, which we saw in the New River after Hurricane Helene, showing, there's semi truck trailers and giant, tanks and just propane tanks, not actual military tanks. But yeah, just tons of it's amazing. Every single project we do, we find a new type of point information to add on to it. And just to give an example of the side scan sonar, here you can see here's some very fine sediment. Here's some coarse sediment. We have drop down cameras that we're able to do, QA, QC, make sure that what we're delineating with the software is what's actually there in reality. And then just as an example, this is a project that we've sampled 4 times now for the Alabama Power Company. In order for them to get their FERC permit to operate Weiss Dam, FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They needed to, one, document conditions in order to get their permit. And so we did that survey, they got their permit. And then they also needed to monitor, because they were, part of their license agreement was that they needed to input an environmental flow coming from the Weiss bypass diversion dam. And so right here, you can see there's a whole bunch of fine sediment with very limited rougher substrate. That was done in 2018. And here we can see 2021, where because the environmental flow is coming through that Weiss bypass, there's actually fine sediment that's getting flushed out of the system and creating more rough substrate that the T&E species that they're managing for kind of require. So it checked all the boxes for Alabama Power. They were to get their FERC permit, they're able to monitor, and then they're actually able to show with meter resolution that the management decisions they made were having a positive impact on the overall water resource. With the abandoned mine land, this is a project we did so it was funded by the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation Enforcement. They're the federal entity and they distribute funds through, there's 6 different states, Alabama being one of them. And so the Alabama Department of Workforce is who distributed the OSMRE funds. And basically this is the Hurricane Creek watershed, just east of Tuscaloosa. And they knew that there were, each one of these polygons right here is what's called a PAD, a problem area description. And so they knew that there was past mining done there and that it was impacting water quality, but they didn't know which ones were the worst, nor did they know where within each sub watershed were the actual problems. And so that's why they enlisted Trutta Environmental Solutions to go and map The whole watershed, that was 250 continuous miles that we mapped in a matter of about 3.5 weeks. There's 240 major confluences, which will come into play when I talk about the water quality sampling, of which we got close to 800 sample sites completed. And again, where we used the stream corridor assessment. And just to briefly go over this, it looks at both riparian zones, both stream banks, as well as the stream bed, and as well brings in all those discrete features that you're seeing. This right here is the output. After we go and we sampled all that data, or sampled all of the stream corridor, then we watch that, we assemble the video, and then we watch the video. And so this right here, we're looking at the, how well does this stream corridor function? And so we'll just go ahead and look at one area in particular that has a whole bunch of non-functionality scores. And you can see it's pretty residential area, so we can look at it on that map. We can look at it in the video as well, because I know exact, video file, everything again is geo-referenced. And so we'll just go ahead and hit play, and you can see this is a very incised stream channel. You just missed it. There's a tire stuck in the stream bank. When we start coming up into this clearing, you can see there's riprap everywhere. So you know that they're trying to slow down the erosion. It doesn't look like they're being very successful. There looks like there's a whole bunch of infrastructure that's exposed. And so while Trutta was funded to go collect data to prioritize abandoned mine lands, we turn on our equipment and we collect everything regardless of what's causing whatever impact to the river where. And so right here, this is stormwater impacts, there's infrastructure impacts. And because the Department of Workforce per se might not be spending money on this, but there's many other different types of watershed groups and then just watershed managers in this Hurricane Creek watershed that are going to be able to use this data. And now they know this is the lowest hanging fruit to go and address this issue as far as reducing the amount of sediment that eventually ends up in Hurricane Creek. Because it's GIS data, we can look at it from multiple different perspectives. Just looking at, as a watershed as a whole, you can see, how does the riparian compare to the stream bank, compared to the stream bed. You can break it up into sub-watersheds, and then you can even prioritize the individual problem area descriptions that the Department of Workforce has been dealing with. And so we're actually able to prioritize each one of those on the stream corridor assessment. And then we're also, so that's actually the stream corridor assessment was the first level of prioritization that we're going to touch on. The second one was looking at all the different discrete points that we documented throughout this watershed. So those are perched culverts, you have acid mine drainage. If you can look close enough right there, you can see that's me. I mean, I'm 6'3". This was just a giant twisted metal trash heap that was literally sitting right on top of the stream that we were surveying. We got the water quality measurements we needed upstream and downstream. But again, you see everything going throughout there. And then you can even break it up into, as far as discrete points go, like, are you only concerned about infrastructure? Well, if so, we can focus on just infrastructure. And so, well, where's all the bridges, culverts, dams, exposed pipes, intakes? So we can prioritize all those. And well, I happen to know which one is the worst one. And so we'll just go right there. And here you guys can see culverts that have been almost washed away. You can see the road up above the old culverts is pretty much gone. You can see that there is active erosion. Every time there is a high water event, there's additional infrastructure, conduit, wire, pipes, all sorts of stuff. And so again, while this isn't necessarily an acid mine drainage issue, which we were originally told to go out there and find, this is a major issue, and it's low hanging fruit as far as what's causing impacts to the water quality of Hurricane Creek. And you wouldn't have seen it if you're only going out there to document issues with acid mine drainage. The next level of prioritization that we did was basically iron oxidizing bacteria, and that's the orange tinged water that you'll see here in a little bit. And we did this one very simply. We did not present, we did moderate, and then we had bad. And so just like a stoplight, green is good, red is bad. And here we'll just go ahead and look at one of the bad areas so you guys can see what does very bad iron oxidizing bacteria look like. And here you can just see the stream was very low pH. I believe it was like 3.5. And there was just absolutely zero aquatic life in regards to, whether amphibians, no fish, no crayfish, nothing. There was a lot of copperheads everywhere, but that was about it. Actually, not copperheads. I take that back. Cottonmouths, just to be specific. And then fourth and final prioritization that we did was focused on water quality. And so we just had in situ was the brand that we used, and just your basic 5 as far as temp, pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and turbidity. And this also, this map right here, you're able to see as I'm walking, when there's 250 miles. I did 27 miles of that by kayak, and then we did the remaining 223 via backpack. And so as we're walking upstream, once we get to a confluence, we put the water quality sound in the tributary, take 3 discrete samples, and we put it back in the main stem, take 3 more discrete samples, and then we just continue hiking upstream to the next confluence. And then we take more. And we had 2 to 3 crews running every single day. And so if there was ever a split into a bigger sub watershed, I would continue up the main stem, and then we'd have another group come in and pick up at that confluence to start doing, high definition stream survey as well as the water quality sampling. And with that effort, again, there's 777 sites total, because you have the major confluences, but then you also have, individual acid mine drainage seeps coming out, and we're able to take a water quality sample downstream of that seep and upstream, and able to show, how big of an impact was that individual seep having on the stream. There's a lot of beautiful water throughout Hurricane Creek. There's also a lot of very bad water. And with the high definition stream survey, and here's the water quality sample, we're just going to kind of show you how we prioritized future actions for the Department of Workforce. The majority of the water quality samples were right around 7, but you obviously have these outliers being in the red. And well, we can just go ahead and geographically map those and show, where were all the worst water quality sections. And you can see there's the problem area descriptions were definitely the worst, but not all of them were all that bad. And so now we can kind of prioritize, like, where's the worst water quality coming from? Again, get that lowest hanging fruit so we can spend the least amount of money and have the biggest bang for the buck. And so now right here, just based on pH alone, we've prioritized which 2 problem area descriptions the Department of Workforce should focus on. And when it comes to prioritization, as I'll go over, there's 4 ways we're doing it right now. But with this 250-mile snapshot that we took, we're going to be able to show there's been reclamation being done since the 80s, and some of it has been more effective than the others. So now we can kind of retroactively look which forms of reclamation were more successful than others. If they were able to spend less money and get bigger impact, we should probably keep doing that. Again, just to prioritize how money's spent. And then we can also prioritize future restoration. And then, 5-10 years down the road from now, when we go back in and resurvey, even those good areas, like, we document everything, because some of those good areas might be starting to get turned down. And it's like, if you don't document everything, you're not going to understand what was there before, what conditions might have been contributing to the reasons for water quality getting worse. If they're doing reclamation, we're going to be able to show where the water quality and different types of habitat are improving. And so the 4 different types of prioritization that we did for them, you have the corridor function. So that's the stream corridor assessment, which streams are functioning the best and which ones are not. Then you have the point impacts. So that's your outfalls, your broken infrastructure, your acid mine drainage. And then you have the iron oxidizing bacteria and the pH. These were pretty correlated, but not exact. And so what the Department of Workforce wanted was us to blend those 4 together. And here you can see each individual catchment basin and the score. And right here, you can see a number 1. This is the most prioritized area, considering pH, stream corridor function, and then the iron oxidizing bacteria, as well as point impacts. And so again, just being able to look at an entire 250-mile watershed and prioritize where should you spend time and money and funding to have the biggest amount of impact with the least amount of resources required. And so we'll switch, that's it for the Hurricane Creek project. I'm going to switch gears to the Wekiva River. This is pretty different. The focus on this project, the problem that Friends of the Wekiva River have is throughout the whole St. Johns River Water Management District, the eelgrass is disappearing from certain areas, and they don't necessarily know why. They have theories, but there's some very good hotspots of very healthy eelgrass within the Wekiva River Basin, and they weren't able to create a sampling protocol to determine, one, where is it now, and is it declining or is it growing? And so this is where we come in. And so we did the high definition stream survey. The underwater video was a very big component. And the eelgrass is just it's an indicator species because one, it's manatee food, but it's also habitat for minnows and other types of wildlife throughout that whole watershed. And again, this was kind of initiating a monitoring program to figure out where is it expanding, contracting, or holding steady. And so step one, we got to conduct, almost 35 miles throughout that whole watershed. And we did that. Here is some video. We started right at Wekiva Springs. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the area, but it's absolutely beautiful water, very highly recreated, which was another part of this survey. And you can see there's a bystander right now. He was actually looking across the river, looking at some little river otters that were playing. And just to kind of give you an idea, here you can look at the water column and see that there's nothing growing. There's actually sand beneath it. Here you can see a healthy crop of eelgrass. And then just for the future slides too, all this stuff on the left, this is what's going to be known as emergent vegetation. It's not on the shoreline. It's actually just floating beds of vegetative mats. And with that, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on, because when we scored this, there's big areas of open channel and then big areas of very constricted channel. And then you have the amount of eelgrass. And so there's numerous different ways that we looked at this as far as what percentage was open, what percentage was submerged aquatic vegetation, and which one was emergent. And so there's many different combinations, and this is just one slide. I can, if you guys wanted to stay later, I can focus a presentation just on this, but just to kind of get as much information in the 45 minutes, I'm going to scoot on. And so looking at on the left, you can see this is the visual classification. So me looking at the left and the right video, the forward video, as well as the underwater video. And then this right here was looking at the sonar data, because sometimes if the water was too deep, you couldn't necessarily see whether or not there was vegetation, and that sonar was really able to zero in on the areas that had it and which didn't. Then this right here is an overview map of all the emergent vegetation based on what percent of the open water did the emergent vegetation cover. Red was mostly covered, green was hardly covered. And so you have these different metrics of eelgrass coverage, channel width, and then in fact, I'll kind of break those down here in a little bit. And so inventory and classification, here I'm showing you depth throughout the entire sample area. Then we have channel width throughout that entire area. We have habitat type, be it shoals, a run, and pools and shallow runs. Then we have bottom hardness, which is a metric that's collected by the side scan sonar unit. And that actually played into the habitat suitability for eelgrass. And then you have right and left stream bank function and modification, as well as the left and right riparian functions. And so taking all of that into consideration, well, in fact, there's even one more part as the water quality. This is just kind of an example showing us. This is actually a river in Tennessee, but as we're coming down river, we're getting a specific measurement for specific conductivity. And then as I come into the tributary, we'll go ahead and sit in there for 30 seconds to a minute, making sure we're getting a signature for water quality of just that tributary, and then we'll come back into the main stem. And then you can kind of see like how big of an impact was that tributary having on the main stem. And so that is what we did throughout the Wekiva River. And then here's showing some of the water quality metrics. Here's water temperature, and then here's dissolved organic matter, CDOM, which is another one of the metrics that we collected. Another task for this project was to collect cross sections, and they kind of wanted that for one, bathymetric purposes, modeling flow going through the area. But then we also used that as kind of a QA QC of, going down river, we're determining river width, percent channel coverage of, the emergent and submerged aquatic vegetation. And so those cross sections were kind of meant as a QA QC of what are we seeing on the longitudinal to what is actually there in reality. And so it's just a good level of QA QC, as well as delivering bathymetric information for them. And then this is kind of the whole point was we used our habitat data. Like we knew the Department of, so Florida DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, like they have metrics for what is suitable habitat for eelgrass, and so we took that into consideration. But then we also looked at wherever we saw eelgrass, we were able to pull the habitat metrics from that. And so if we saw good populations of eelgrass, we knew how deep it was, how turbid the water was, how wide was the channel, how much emergent vegetation versus open channel percentage. And so we're able to use our habitat, like use our actual presence absence survey into the habitat suitability model for the submerged aquatic, or for the eelgrass. And this is what we ended up delivering to them. And so, on the left stream bank, so model prediction on the left stream bank, looking downstream. And so the model predicted this is where we should see eelgrass. And then the right side is where we actually saw eelgrass. On the left is where we modeled it, and then where we saw it. And those differences where we modeled where the eelgrass should be, however, we did not see any. Now we're starting to prioritize, okay, well, this habitat is absolutely perfect. And down here is a perfect example, because there was a lot of perfect areas where we should have seen eelgrass, but we did not see it. And so now it's those managers' decision. It's what we saw while we were in the field was a whole bunch of boat activity, jet skis going up and down. And so we saw a lot of increased wave action. And so that was having impacts on the amount of vegetation within the channel. And then you also have impacts from invasive species like tilapia. And then you also have the influence from the St. John's, or some sort, yeah, St. John's River right down here. And, whenever they get a major flood, very turbid water will back up into here. And so how big of an impact, how long of a lasting impact will that have? And so there's numerous factors contributing to why eelgrass might not be living there. But again, we take in as much information as we can and deliver that to the managers. And then when we go back 5-10 years from now and do this same survey, we're going to be able to show them where is eelgrass growing or where is it declining, and what types of management decisions have they made in between now and then versus what are they going to do in the future? Should they outlaw recreational boating in these areas if they're trying to promote growth? And so that's just all up to them. All we do is deliver the data. Switching gears again, there's 4 projects we're going to touch on, so I'm just going to keep going through them. The Chattahoochee River. In fact, I'm not going to get too deep on this project right here. I actually have on our YouTube channel, if you guys are interested, 30 minutes of just Chattahoochee. That is on our YouTube channel. But just to kind of give a brief overview, that was completed for the National Park Service, and they wanted to do a recreational habitat suitability modeling. And so we ran the stream corridor assessment. So we're able to show, where's the different types of habitat throughout this watershed. Then here's, just an example for left bank condition. And just looking at, so there was like, I believe, like 45 miles of the main channel, but then there's also 7 additional tributaries that fed into it that the National River Recreation Area that the National Park Service manages. And so we kind of looked at everything. And so here's all that information, kind of comparing both riparians, both stream banks, and both stream beds. And because again, this is all GIS information, you can look at it from a total length, and you can also look at it as a percentage. And so this stuff will really come into play when we go back 5-10 years from now and resample it, and we're able to show, what percentage of this watershed has improved or declined and where has it. And so here we're able to compare, just the rivers, just the main stem of the river compared to all the tributaries. We can break it up more of looking at just different river segments on the main channel, but then we can also compare those 7 different, it should have been 7, 1, 2, 3, so 6 different main tributaries feeding into the Chattahoochee River. And so you can kind of compare those and, where's the lowest hanging fruit, which tributary is contributing the most amount of sediment or has the worst amount of habitat, because that's probably where you want to focus your efforts. And then, within each one of those tributaries, where's the exact location within that tributary that there is a bad impact, and like, bam, right here, I can show you what is going on where, and that is where you need to focus your efforts on. And I kind of brought up how this was a recreational suitability model, was kind of it was restoration prioritization, figuring out which tributaries were contributing the worst water quality. There's a big recreational use. And so as we watched that video, one, we took note if there was angling fish, like wading fishermen, boat fishermen, shoreline fishermen, there were tubers, kayakers, whitewater rafting, there was rafters, like there's a whole gamut of different types of recreation. and certain types of those recreation can only be done in certain parts of the river. And so we prioritize, where within this river, like where is all the whitewater rafting? Good. We need to make sure that there's access and warning signs upstream of those whitewater rafting areas, because there's also, I saw, third graders out there in canoes out there on trips, obviously not going through the whitewater, but they were going through some very safe areas that had, access upstream and downstream so that they could, go out and recreate on the water at a very easy level. And so whether it's angling fishermen, boating fishermen, now the National Park Service knows which areas of the river are best for which types of recreation. And then they can make sure that, okay, well, if this area is good for fishing, we need to make sure that anglers can hike in and go out there and fly fish. And so again, just a whole bunch of different types of recreation. The next project and last one is the Upper Delaware River. This was a big benefit of high definition stream survey is it's one survey, but that data can be used for multiple different purposes. And so this was perfect up there where there's two different state agencies. There's the National Park Service as well as Trout Unlimited. So there's a lot of partners all contributing to this project. And the more partners you have, the more cost effective it is. Like every person can technically spend 1/5 of the total project. However, everybody gets the entire data set and everybody's working together. And so here is the Upper Delaware watershed. You can see there's, the East Fork and the West Fork, and then there's also two tributaries, Shehawken and Equinunk, which I will get into here a little bit later. Habitat suitability was the kind of the primary factor for this one, especially with Trout Unlimited being involved. And so there's big questions, where are those fish now? Looks like I have some formatting issues. I apologize about that. Where are they now? Where do we protect? Where do we restore? And then also, where do we reintroduce? Every single one of those questions can be answered using HDSS data, but how you use that HDSS data, like you need to mold that data in a proper way to answer these questions. And we'll kind of touch base on how we can do that for the different species. And so this is an example. We took the habitat suitability for adult brown trout, juvenile trout, and spawning. So not only are we able to differentiate species, but we can do different life stages of that same species. And this was all taken out of peer-reviewed published work. And so we can show here on the main stem, where is the best habitat for adult brown trout? And so we have that mapped out. And then I told you there was a Equinunk. Yeah, so there's Equinunk Creek where we actually use the backpack method to go up and down that. And we're able to show, well, so here's adult brown trout, then you have juvenile brown trout, and then you have spawning brown trout. And so these are all very different answers utilizing the same data to come up with. And just to kind of give a brief overview on high definition fish survey, this is, we initially wear the backpack and we just hike up the stream, and then the next day or the day before, we'll go through with underwater video cameras. And using those underwater video cameras, the best way to put it is it's another type of fishery sampling. I don't know if any of you have ever been involved with electroshocking or netting. There's numerous different types of fishery sampling out there, but we incorporated the HDFS, the high definition fish survey, and with the high definition stream survey. And here you can see, if any of you guys are good with species, I believe there's 7 different species in this short little video right here. And you can see one, we know what the depths are. In this little pool, we know what type of vegetation there is. We know if there's woody debris, and we know how many and what types of fish are there. You can see a lot of brook trout. In fact, the managers didn't even know that there were brook trout in this stretch of river. And so they were very happy to know that those were there. And obviously a whole bunch of other species. And again, with this being a reviewable video archive, if I ever see a fish and I might not be so sure, like, is this a brown trout or is this a brook trout or is this, pick any different species out there. If I have any questions on it, I can literally send this to 50 different ichthyologists throughout the country, and I can get QA/QC, I guess you're right or no, you're wrong. And this kind of just shows, what species of fish we saw where. And so here you have your different species of trout, then you have your cyprinids, and then your other incidental species such as largemouth and smallmouth bass. And one other big aspect of what high definition stream survey was able to provide is we went and did the survey, and about 2 months later, as I was still watching the video, actually we finished watching the video, they called us up and asked, are you guys able to document Japanese knotweed? And so right here, you can see the white flowering plants. That's Japanese knotweed. It's a very, very highly invasive species. It's very prolific especially up on the upper Delaware River. I've seen it on a few other rivers. And they wanted to know, just give me presence, absence. And so one, I didn't have to go back out, assemble a field crew and resurvey this entire river to document presence and absence of Japanese knotweed. All I had to do was go and watch the video again. And so here is the presence absence of Japanese knotweed. You can zoom in and see the detail. We did both left bank and right bank, showing every second of video either has it or it doesn't. And then because this is all GIS information, now we're actually able to show how many meters of invasive plant species and then percentages. And so, 5-10 years from now, when we go back to that survey, we're going to be able to show where is Japanese knotweed declining or where is it growing further, because they're spending a lot of money trying to figure out, they're like both mechanical, chemical, and biological controls of this invasive plant. It's a very costly invasive species, and they're trying everything. And so now they actually have a baseline condition of where is it, how bad is it, and is it going to get better or worse? And just to kind of focus on the deliverables real quick, anytime we go and do a survey, the first thing we deliver is that StreamView video. And then the GIS data is based on, what specific questions are you trying to answer? Are you trying to prioritize acid mine drainage issues? Are you trying to prioritize recreation? Are you trying to prioritize submerged aquatic vegetation? And so, or, fish habitat suitability. The list kind of goes on, but we make sure that we answer your specific question. Excuse me. And then we'll also deliver that report answering those questions. Sorry about that. So this right here, it's one survey. I told you that addresses numerous issues. So we have, stormwater, MS4, we've done projects for documenting that type of infrastructure. There's also bridges and Department of Transportation. A lot of the work we do for hydropower, they're concerned about water quantity, water quality. Same with water treatment facilities or even water intakes. We're able to, integrate with habitat suitability modeling, working with wildlife and fisheries agencies across the United States. And then what I really love is, whether we're doing a project for environmental groups or nonprofits or for, state or federal agencies, we're able to deliver this map product. And so we can show you on a scale, green is good, red is bad. Like, where is it good? Where is it bad? And then we can put you on the water and actually show you, this is why it's good. This is why it's bad. And so while a lot of us in this room might be educated and have experience in regards to hydrology and like how rivers work and what is good and what is bad, it makes it very easy for stakeholders. There's a lot of stakeholders that care about the water resources, but they might not have the background that we do. And this just makes it very easy for them to understand what is going on where. And with that, and I'm having a few more formatting issues, so I apologize about that. But with that, I think I'm right about 45 minutes. So I think I timed that out pretty well.
Yes. Thank you, Brett, very much.
Perfect.
Great job. Everybody, I sent Brett's, I see that there are some formatting issues there. So if you can't make out his email on his slide, it's also in the webinar chat. So thank you again, Brett. That was very, very eye-opening. Your work is interesting. We have now some time for Q&A. So for any attendees who might have any questions for Brett, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little tab that says Q&A. So if you have any questions, please type them up there, and Brett, you can answer them to the best of your ability. To get us started, Brett, I actually have a question. What is the most unexpected challenge that you have encountered with HDSS? Obviously, there are some of the, I would say, more obvious ones, like the topographical challenges, cottonmouths, things like that. What's something that kind of caught you off guard with this work?
Caught me off guard. So a good example right now, we just did 160 miles up on the New River in Virginia. The low water was definitely an issue. It's easier for us to do surveys when there's higher water. And so some of the days were more frustrating than others because you'd have to get out and drag over a shallow area and then get back in the boat and keep on going. So the shallow water, depending on what platform we're in, can definitely have a big impact. It's funny you brought up cottonmouths. When we were doing Hurricane Creek, I'd say, I mean, each group saw about 10 a day. In fact, those are just the ones we saw. That are the ones that we didn't see that were there. And I remember so many people would be like, "Oh, they'll chase after you. They're mean. They're that." We had zero incidents with cottonmouths the entire 3.5 weeks we were out there. All they do is sit there and look at you. And we have been dangerously close by accident before realizing where they were. We had zero strikes, we had zero impacts with the cottonmouths, and I just always got to give a little plug in for them, saying like how one, beautiful, and then also misunderstood, because they were very gentle creatures. And as far as nemesis, my biggest nemesis in the field is poison ivy. I'm extremely allergic to it. And if anybody else out there listening is allergic to poison ivy, get a little spray bottle, fill it up about 90% with water, and then put in Dawn dish soap. And so before we go out into the field, if we knew we were going to come across it, I would spray my hands and my arms, my pants, my wading boots, my waders, anything that might come in contact. You literally pre-spray it, you pre-treat it with Dawn dish soap and water. And then if you walk through it and you come out of the field before anybody got in my truck, I'd be spraying waders and boots and hiking poles and equipment. And not a single person got a single speck of, in fact, I have not gotten it since I started pre-treating with Dawn dish soap. So if anybody is allergic to, I have to go to a hospital if I get it. Like, I'm very allergic to poison ivy, and I see it every time I'm out in the water. But the Dawn dish soap has definitely changed my what do you call it? My process in the field, made a big difference.
Your SOP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for answering that, Brett. Are you able to see the Q&A chat, by the way?
Let me minimize that. I will in a second. Where are you?
It's at the very bottom, and I can read the question to you too, but yes, it should be at the bottom, a little tab next to the screen share on your screen.
I just don't even have that for some reason.
Okay, well.
Yeah, go ahead and read it to me. I'm sorry.
Well, we had an anonymous attendee ask, has there been any interest in mapping microplastics, perhaps to identify sources?
Not per se yet. That's the beauty, is like, whether it's eDNA, whether it's microplastics, whether it's harmful algae blooms, we go wherever somebody wants this meter resolution data. That's where we'll do the work. But I've not been pursued yet in regards to microplastics. Now, if that's an easy sensor to put on a boat, we'll happily go and do that. Like, there's even a new, like, what we're pitching a project right now to do 250 miles of the Duck River up in Tennessee, and we're actually going to be running a new. It's not conductivity, but it's an electro potential type meter, which really highlights the areas of interchange between surface water and groundwater, basically that interaction. And so, like, we can take any sensor and put it on a boat and georeference the data. And so, yeah, if you're interested in microplastics and have a project, I'll be more than happy to discuss it.
Awesome. Does anybody else in the audience have any other questions for Brett? All right. Well, I did share his email in the webinar chat, and then it's also on the screen there. So if anybody does have any questions after we close this all up, you know how to contact Brett. Brett, I want to say thank you one more time. That was an amazing presentation, and we appreciate you coming on to the TigerStream today and talking with everybody.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the invite. We'll be talking soon.
And then just one more time for everyone who's attending, just keep your eyes on your email. Should be 2 days from now, you'll get an automated email from me with instructions on how to download your PDH. It can be a little tricky sometimes, especially if it's your first time doing it. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're running into problems with downloading your PDH. But that's all we have for today. So thank you all for joining us. Brett, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next time.